Hello, Hollow Sector, Tailspin here. I wanted to make a video that just briefly covers what all the build queues are, because, when you go to your game list and you're looking for games, looking to be interested in games, and you see games like Standard, Classic, Custom, and then you hear about all these build queues and build points and what to do. I know it's a lot to take in. It's probably understanding the queues can be one of the most challenging things to do with planets. So if you go to the how-to section, how to play, and you scroll down, and under general information, game setup options, there is build queues. So you go here and you can see that Planets.nu uses 4 different systems. I think it's going to be reduced to 3 because I believe that the new one that Joshua just put out in the last PlanetsCon, the planetary production queue, PPQ, that is going to merge. It's kind of an advance of PQ, so I think PQ is going to disappear, and you're just going to have 3. But for now, there's 4. So let's just talk about the PBP system, the priority queue, which is the original one, and it's usually in classic games. So when you see classic, this is the build system you're going to get. So there's a limit usually of 500 ships in most games. It's most standard games, most general games, unless it's a custom game or they've redesigned it, or a blitz game or a giant melee or something like that. Like, most games will have a total of 500 planets and 500 ships allowed. And when you hit those 500 ships, regular builds don't happen as much. And this is where these build points and priority points and priority builds and different builds happen. So with the priority queue, you can use the PBN code to priority build ships on specific planets that you want. So you get to sort of choose what ship you want built, and these priority builds only happen when you have 21 or more build points, priority build points. So that's a really key thing for the priority queue. And you earn them primarily through combat, majorly through combat, and also recycling ships gives you priority build points. There's other ways, but those are the main ways to get points. And so in the priority build point system, the priority queue, ships have a majorly high value. If you lose a ship, someone is going to get a build. And the builds are, besides priority builds, if we drop below 500, below the ship limit, these builds are assigned to starbases in planetary ID number order. So Starbase 1 will get a build, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on. So that's why your ships have a very high value, because you usually know which starbases are coming up, which starbases are going to get built on next. So everybody prepares for that, and you really need to keep ahead of the queue by 100 starbases. You need to keep ahead of that, so you know that when a build comes up, when the ship limit drops below 500, you can be ready to get a build. And with priority build points, I find that there is a very distinct distinction between the stages of the game. Meaning there's an early part to the game, a mid part to the game, and an end part. And with priority build system, the priority queue, it is highlighted more. It comes out more. You see a major shift when you go from the early game and building ships. And as soon as the ship limit hits, there's a major shift in the game to targeting specific planets, specific star bases to build. So it's a big shift in the game. It happens in the other queue systems too, but not as distinctly as in the PvP system. And planets limit ships. This is a fairly new one, and I don't play this one much, but usually you see it more. It's not a standard one. It's not a classic. You see it in custom mentor games, beginner games, and it basically, however many planets you have, that's how many ships you can build. Sometimes there's a little bit of extra too, maybe like an extra 10. So if you own 100 planets, you can have 110 ships, something like that. So really in this one, you got to build. You got to build ships, you got to build star bases, you got to move your resources to your star bases. So there's a big focus on building and hoarding and accumulating your minerals. And in planets limit ships, your ships have less value, because as long as you have 100 planets, you can have 100 ships. You lose 30 ships, you can rebuild those ships as long as you don't lose your planets. So your ships kind of have less value, so you sort of throw them at the enemy and push and push and push. So if you like that kind of game, it does have to usually be custom made. There's no point system in this, so you don't have to worry about priority points or anything like that. And the next one is production queue. This has been the standard one. This has been in some of the championship games lately, over the last few years. And basically, you get more points and you spend more points. So you get extra points from star bases. Every time there's a non-build, like you own a star base but it doesn't build anything, you get 2 points. Or even if there's a build assigned to you, you still get 2 points. And so you end up sort of getting more points. And especially if you build star bases early on, you get a lot more points, and you have this bank of points you can hold on to. So you end up with more points, but spending them is a little bit more. Where is it? Oh, here it is, yeah. So it's 1 plus, it's an extra to build the hulls in this. So you get more points, but it costs more to build ships. So in the production queue, the PQ system, ships still have a good value, but there tends to be a focus more on building star bases and prepping the star bases with builds, good builds. And this is probably one of the complaints about it, because when a build comes up, it's random. It's just randomly chosen from the star bases. So if you have a lot of star bases, chances are you're going to get a lot of builds. But, if one person has 30, another has 10, that person with 10 still could get all the builds. So it's kind of random. So that's why it's really important to build star bases and prepare them with a ship, all of them. So there's a high value on those star bases. And since they've introduced this, I found that the stages in the game have sort of blurred a little bit. The early game, there's still kind of a race to build ships, but there's not a clear cutoff point, and there is a cutoff point, but it blurs a bit more. It's more stretches out more into the game. Sometimes it used to be like turn 25, turn 24. Now it's turn 30, turn 33. And it sort of blurs and stretches, and there's battle happening very, very early, like, before the ship limit hits. So it tends to blur those lines a little bit. So if you want to earn points with the PQ system, build star bases and get your non-builds. That's a big area where you get them, but you also still get them from combat as well. So that is the PQ. And now this is the one they introduced at Planets.nu, which I believe is going to transition into the standard one. But they're just testing it right now. So PPQ, the Planetary Production Queue. This is an evolution of the production queue. So it's very similar to PQ, but it's slightly different. And the goal was, I believe, to make sure that the builds aren't as random and they're spread out more evenly. That's all you still earn points for non-builds, you still earn points for combat, but the builds that happen tend to be more even. And so it changes the focus to put it on your ships. It changes the focus to I don't even know what I'm saying. So the new PPQ system changes the focus to controlling territory. So you need to fight, you need to gain territory in order to have planets. The more planets you have, the more likely you're going to get builds. The more sure builds you will get. They've also added you still have the PBN codes, the priority build codes, but you also have these regular build codes, the RBN codes. And those allow you to strategically choose where your builds are going to happen. So anyway, so that's the planetary production queue. You're only going to see that into some test games right now, maybe some custom games. But I believe that one is going to become the standard eventually. Okay, so those are some of the build queues. And just before I end this, I do want to show one thing. At Planets Magazine, there's an article called Priority Build Points Regular Ships. And it lists all the ships for all the races, not the campaign ones, but just the regular ships. And it shows how much PBPs it costs to build, and how much you get by destroying them, and how much you get by recycling them. Recycling is always 1 point, but destroying is different. The heavier the mass, the more priority points you get for destroying them, and also the more it costs to build them. And so your carriers and such cost a lot of points. But what I want to point out is that your Merlin and your Neutronic Refinery, very important ships for staying in the game long term and building quickly. Try to get these out before the ship limit because they are very costly. The Merlin costs 19. If this was production queue, the Merlin would cost 20 production points to put out. So you want to try to get those ships out before the ship limit. All right, so that is my thoughts and suggestions for build queues. So I'll see you out there.